Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today is Easter Monday and I'm on day number 10 of the meditation. Before I start, a little update. Dowsing rods are okay. I cleaned them, disinfected them, and they are ready to be used for whatever I need them for. And but for now, I'm going to go ahead and pull a card. I've got the Gilded Tarot again by Giro Marchetti. And I'm going to see what card comes to me today. Hope you're all well. Hope you're starting a new week happily and joyfully and everything. And let's see what the cards have to say today. Okay, this card. Okay, he said stop. So I'm going to go ahead and pull. Oh, this is interesting. I got the Devil. Not exactly an optimistic card, and considering that the meditation today is actually pretty optimistic, very interesting that I would get this card. So what I'm going to do is, because this has such a negative sort of feel to it, I'm going to go ahead and pull the book out and read the description of this card and see if we can come up with why it is specifically I pulled this card, because I'm stumped. Okay, it says, the Devil is an interesting card that has different connotations and, like most cards, can have positive and negative interpretations. A masculine form engulfed in flames wears a thorn mask, further male symbol. The mask represents mystery, secrecy, but also possibly blindness. The pentacles behind him and on the mask represent earthly element of our physical being. The Devil's presence quite often appears when a situation is dragging you down and you feel helpless to change it. It can show a form of enslavement, whether to an idea, an addiction, or even manipulative or controlling relationship. Overindulgence tends to result in upset, greed, or lust can become self-destructive. Overspending is a typical example. However, it is an important message is that the self-enslavement, by taking control of this behavior, we are released from it and are free to walk away. It can also carry an aspect of secrecy, such as secret plans being made either by yourself or others around you. The surrounding cards would indicate which. Okay, I don't have any surrounding cards, but I can pull another card that I can do. Let us not forget, prior to being symbolized as an evil figure in religion, the devil was previously identified as a pagan god Pan. So that is what it says about this particular card. I'm not sure if this has something to do with, at the beginning of the meditation, I start talking about something that may have been in something that could be bringing me down or what have you. So very interesting to note. But I'm going to pull another card. I'm going to see if there's another card that can kind of explain this. So here we go. Okay, the card that I've pulled is the Five of Cups, which is disappointment, sadness, and sorrow. Again, I don't know what I would be disappointed, sad, or sorrowful about, or what the meditation, in essence, maybe it's a disappointment in a person or in an idea or an interpretation. So I'm going to go ahead and put this aside, and I'm not going to pull another card, but I'm going to read through the meditation, and let's see what maybe somebody who is an casual observer of tarot or a casual reader might actually infer regarding this. But I do know that the Five of Cups does encapsulate this idea of disappointment, sadness, and sorrow, and because of the three spilled cups. So let me see what with the meditation. I'll go forward and read the meditation, and then we can come back to these cards and maybe figure it out. And maybe there's something to be said here. I'm not really sure, but the fact that it says encapsulate something that's kind of sad and negative, I don't really feel sad or negative, so I don't know, but we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and start the meditation. It says day 10, April 21st, 2025. I said, so Easter Sunday is now over. We are now on Easter Monday. The weather looks typical for April, and I am stewing about something. And Nigel says, let me guess, you are stewing about being called strange. I said, yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. As if, is it an insult wrapped in a compliment or a compliment wrapped in an insult? Nigel says, maybe it's what it is. Not every person has the best possible way of expressing themselves. The notion of the word is like spirituality. The idea is definable by each individual person. Some may say that the overall concept of strange is merely a way of saying different. You have a different way of looking at the world. You can be in you can be in the clouds. You can see in the clouds that there are animal shapes, but at the same time, you can also see that there are things happening in the world that are encased in strange anomalies. The thing is, to some extent, the word strange is very much like the word weird. They are both defined in different ways, entirely based on how you choose to interpret them. Words are simply words, and how you interpret them will determine how you feel when those descriptions are affixed to you by another person. Using certain descriptions will always be a basis for interpretation. 2 days ago, you used the word spiritual. You've always said that the notion of being spiritual is a matter of interpretation. Do you view yourself as a spiritual person, or do you wait for another to determine if you're a spiritual person at all? If you were to say to me, or to any of your guides, am I spiritual? The answer to this question is yes, you are, because you focus on the ideas that are spiritual. Something's really kind of like, okay. In scope. So that assertion is absolutely accurate. The notion of whether or not you are strange could be intertwined in the same exact way. You are someone who looks a bit deeper than other people might. You see things in a way others might not be willing or able to see. You are not seen as a person who marches to the same rhythm as other people might. Instead, you are walking to a rhythm that is all your own. Some may say that you are a bit of a dreamer, which could be intertwined in the concept of strange. You see, there are many definitions that could be affixed, but none of them are intended to be an insult. They just may be a word that some may say or define as different. When you intertwine the concept of being different with strange, you can say with pride and certainty, yes, I'm strange. Yes, I'm different. Why else would you want to be like everyone else? You've always prided yourself to marching to a beat of a different drum. I said, that is true. The people I knew in school used to call me a hippie. I was given the nickname of Flower Child when I was in high school. I never viewed it as an insult, although in hindsight, it probably was the intention. Nigel says, yes, and the fact that you did not respond to the comments in an emotional way, but instead ignored them, discouraged those from searching for and perhaps finding other descriptors to define you, or possibly offend you or hurt you. It is the same as the concept of whether you push back against the will. It is the same as the concept of whether or not you push back against them, as that will have an impact that could grow or expand. And I said, is it like the things that are responses to people by leaders who do not like to be called out or called names? Nigel says, yes. What happened when an angry man tries to bully others to see him as being a weak man? The others strike back with their own feelings, and things fester and grow. You see, when you respond in anger to something or someone might say to you in an angry manner, the conflict rises. When you ignore the conflict, then you rise above it, and then the lack of response is left to the other person. This is why specifically we have been saying that the ways people respond has an impact on how others will interact with them. I said, so you're not saying that people should oppose a tyrannical leader? And Nigel says, oh, heavens, no. I'm saying that when someone responds to a tyrant and the words somehow mock that person, then they can decide how to respond. Given the experience that the world is having with this particular bully, the people in general are responding in such a way as they would respond to a petulant child. It is, in fact, the only way they can respond. The act of responding to a bully or their tactics will be a fine line to cross. For what it's worth, these are two vastly different scenarios. How does one person address a schoolyard bully, and how does a society react to a leader playing the role of a bully? The individual might choose to ignore the bully, whereas the society might choose to call them out. The thing that people have to realize is that a bully thrives on getting all of the attention. They want people to see them as being clever. When a society calls out a bully, then they are basically saying that the bully has no power over them, which is how enlightened people are choosing to respond. A bully does not like to be ignored, and they most certainly do not like to be mocked. They want to be told how clever they are, how much of an impact they have. And I'm going to stop there for a moment, and I'm going to reflect back on these two cards, because I don't think that this is in relation to me at all. I think this is in relation to the concept of bullies and how people respond to that bully. And what we've got here is we've got these really negative cards, these negative, disappointing kind of cards, where you have a symbol of evil and ill will, and the symbol of disappointment and sorrow and sadness. So what you've got here is you've got a bully and the response, and how the bully's feelings are coming forward in these particular cards. So that's how I interpret it. Somebody may actually have another interpretation for it. But when I first pulled these cards, I thought, oh my God, this is about me? No, I hope not. But when I look at these cards and I look at this in terms of this particular part of the meditation, I'm thinking, wow, this really does coincide with the notion of having a bully and how the bully becomes disappointed in the outcome of the action of being a bully. So that's very interesting. So, but I'm going to continue because there's actually two halves to this meditation. It doesn't feel like really one specific meditation, but it feels like two halves to a meditation that are like two separate parts where the discussions go into a different direction. So I'm going to continue now. But before I do, I'm going to take another card off the top of the deck, and I'm going to look at it. And we've got here the Nine of Cups. So I'm going to continue with the meditation, and I'm going to see if this Nine of Cups actually coincides with the rest of the meditation. And we'll see what happens. So after I finish with the meditation, I will take a look at this card a little bit more. Okay, so I said, I remember the conversation with Gene Roddenberry about the episode where no one has gone before. One of the characters thought he was all that, and he was bossing around the young man. And Gene Roddenberry comes in and says, you're onto something. The so-called learned man coming out and saying he's all that. He knew better than everyone else, tried to maintain that he was all that and a cup of tea. And I said, yeah. Then Wesley asked the traveler straight up if the guy was a joke. Or what was the guy's name? Do you remember? And he says, strangely, I don't, but the name will come to you. And I said, I guess. But I found the guy to be absolutely annoying. But when when he later was proven to not be this hotshot, his whole demeanor shifted. The arrogance that he embodied suddenly faded. He truly thought he was all that in a cup of tea, as you said. And he said, and Gene Roddenberry says, there are many of these people out there who believe that. Their arrogance and condescension are vast and wide. But then they are called out. And I said, the name was Kaczynski. And he says, very good. So when you first saw Kaczynski, what did you think of him? I said, I thought what Commander Riker thought. What a pompous, arrogant such and such. And Gene Roddenberry said, right. But when he found out that he was not responsible for the experiment going awry, he was taken down a few pegs. I said, yeah, by a teenager. I think that this is fascinating, how the adults all wrote off the teenager. But then when one of them said that the Wesley had said what was going on, the boy got confronted by the other adults. Yes, Gene Roddenberry says, he tried to tell the grown-ups what he had seen, but because he was a child, no one would listen to him. I said, yeah, and later they were basically given an opportunity to come to the conclusion that a young person could do something great. The concept reminds me of when I was a teenager and was told that I couldn't read certain books because I was not supposed to. It was all very similar to my experiences. And Gene Roddenberry says many young people were written off. I saw myself as a sort of Wesley character. Perhaps the fans did not like this, but this character was significant because for every person who ever dreamed of traveling the stars, Wesley became a more relatable character. The problem was that too many grown-ups refused to listen to the children because they felt that they were better or more advanced than the child. I said, I always felt that the treatment of the character of Wesley was wrong. People seemed jealous of him. And Gene Roddenberry says, yes, I saw that, but could not very easily call it out. But yes, it was when the traveler acknowledged him that jealousy seemed to get worse. I said, yes, I think that a lot of people lost the point with the character, even some of the crew. Later, when he walked away from this, he decided that it no longer mattered what others thought or expected. His arc was very good. And Gene Roddenberry says, I'm glad you got that impression of him. It was what I had essentially intended. I said, thank you. I'm grateful. Maybe we can explore that episode further. What was the idea behind Where No One Has Gone Before? It seemed like a deeply spiritual concept with regards to thought. And Gene Roddenberry says, well, what if you could travel to a place where thought action could spontaneously occur? The notion that as soon as you think of an idea or a person, that it materializes before your very eyes. That was the idea, thought and action and control of thought. All of these things are part of what the story was about. The thoughts wander about. What could be created in a short span of time? Could you recreate a daydream, realize a hope or ambition? In one scene, there was the young woman who was dancing. She must have had a thought about becoming a ballerina as a small child. The man playing an instrument, even the captain having tea with his grandmother. All of these thoughts the people might have had even when they were doing their job. I said, I did that a lot when I would go be at choir rehearsal. My mind would just wander into a daydream, but it could never be materialized. And Gene Roddenberry says, yes, but imagine where your mind could go at any given instance and what manifestations could come about. Realizing all the while how much people's minds could wander, suddenly being told to focus your mind on one thing or one person. As the captain realized how much stuff can be in the human mind at one precise instance, he made the order to focus one's mind on the problem at hand. This is very hard to do. Anytime you meditate and recognize how much you allow your thoughts to drift, it's not an easy task. Then you tell yourself to focus on a simple act of counting to 10. I said, yeah, I see what you mean, but one cannot merely focus on meditation during the 1980s. It was not really something that was accepted, well, except to certain circles and ideas. And he says, correct. And I said, that really was a very spiritually based story, dealing with human imperfections, ego, and finally realization that our thoughts have power. And he said, indeed. And I said, I want to say that this extended far beyond science fiction. And Gene Roddenberry says, yes, it did. I said, wow, I'm looking forward to more discussions with you. This was really enlightening. And he says, till next time then. I said, thank you. So how do you feel, Nigel says, so now do you feel better about being called strange? I said, oh yeah, I do. Thank you, Nigel. I think we have now come full circle. And Nigel says, indeed we have. Then we can close today. That was nice. And I said, thank you, Nigel, and thank you, Mr. Roddenberry. And Gene Roddenberry comes in and says, it's Gene. I said, okay, thank you, Gene. This has been an amazing session. I'm really grateful for it. So that is the end of the meditation. And wow, what an interesting conversation. It went from something that kind of was encapsulated in a negative sort of vibe to something that was very, very positive. And so I've got the Nine of Cups here. I'm going to go ahead and look this up, and we'll see what the Knight of Cups has to say. And Swords, Seven of Wands, Three of Cups. Okay, we're moving into the Nine of Cups. The jolly innkeeper greets and salutes us with a cup held high, while 8 more upright cups sit neatly stacked upon full barrels, representing cheer and abundance. The Nine of Cups is one of the most promising of the tarot and is sometimes referred to as the wish card, signifying the achievements of an important desire that brings you to fulfillment. It can represent emotional and material fulfillment, abundance, also sensual pleasures. It indicates you will feel well pleased. Okay, so this is the second half of the meditation. Very nice, pleasing, positive, good feeling after discussing a not so positive and negative feeling. So this is the counter. This is like countering this. And I think that I'm getting a little bit better at interpreting these cards, and I'm getting a little bit better at understanding that even though you get something like this, that there is something good to come out of it later. And even though you may have disappointment in one thing, the light does come through and the goodness does prevail. So here you go. So with that said, that was a really fun, interesting, insightful session, I guess you could say, meditation. I hope you have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the Easter Monday, and take care. Have a really awesome time, and we'll see you tomorrow for the next session or the next meditation. Take care, and as always, namaste.